Blue Jackets are in a position to take advantage of another team that might have some cap struggles. Is Buffalo one of those teams? Could Alex Tuch be a Blue Jacket next season? We are going to discuss that on today's episode of Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, and to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get into it, though, I do want to remind everybody today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150, in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. We're going to talk about Alex Tuch today. We've done a couple, I think, of episodes on like UFAs the Blue Jackets could target, or RFAs potentially. You know, guys that the Blue Jackets could bring in if they are unable to retain some of their current pending UFAs. Obviously, with Charlie Coyle re-signing, that gives the Blue Jackets the center depth that they need, hopefully. But I know that they are looking for an answer on the wing still, right? Is they are still looking for someone to put on that top line with Adam Fantilli and Marchenko. Mason Marchment did a pretty good job since his acquisition. Is Alex Tuch a better option? That's one of the things I want to talk about today. I want to talk about Tuch in general. I want to talk about him as a potential upgrade from Mason Marchment. I want to talk about what kind of contract he's going to get, and also would he fit on that top line? So Alex Tuch has had a weird couple of weeks. He has no points in his last 5 games. His last point is a goal that he had against Boston. All 7 of his playoff points so far came in that 6-game series against Boston. So he actually hasn't registered a point against Montreal in the 5-game series so far. Not for lack of trying, right? Like, he's shooting the puck plenty. He had 6 shots on goal in one of these games, but he's also been on the ice for a lot of Montreal's goals as well. So he's not having the best playoff series right now, which does make me wonder. I don't think he's setting money on fire necessarily, but at the beginning-ish of the season, there was a lot of talk of like, well, a team is going to give Alex Tuch, $10 million. Is he going to get, the Adrian Kempe contract? I believe Adrian Kempe is making 10.5 right now, which I might be wrong about. 10.6, which is, that I think was the kind of contract that Alex Tuch was potentially looking for. And he's been a pretty good player the past few years. So since 22-23, he had almost an 80-point season, had 36 goals. Since then, he's been a pretty consistent 60-point guy. 30 goals, 30 assists, give or take, which is not bad. Like a consistent 60-point guy is pretty good. He's got 200 goals in 615 career games. Really has kind of come alive again since going to Buffalo. The first season with Buffalo was a bit rough, but in the 4 seasons since then, he's been a pretty good player. And he's also, been a big part of the reason that they got to the playoffs this season, right? Like, he had 33 goals for them this year, which I believe led the Sabres. I'm just going to double check that to make sure. No, excuse me, second to Tage Thompson. But he was one of 2 30-goal scorers on the team, right? So he's a big part of this team. Was 3rd, I believe, on the team in scoring overall, behind Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin. Like, he was a big part of this Sabres playoff push, right? Not putting up the numbers in the playoffs recently, but it becomes it really kind of boils down to, is this player who he is over an 82-game season, or is he who he is over this last 6 games that he's played, or 5 games? I believe game 6 is tonight or tomorrow night, as of the time of recording this. He is almost certainly, on paper anyway, an upgrade on Mason Marchment, right? Like, I like Mason Marchment a lot. I think he fit in really well with this team. I think Tuch is a better player than Marchment, who had 45 points in 68 games this season, including 19 goals. I believe 15 of those goals were scored with the Blue Jackets. Yeah, in 39 Blue Jackets games this season, he had 32 points, including 15 goals. So not quite a point a game player, but had a really good end to the year. And he was one of like 4 Blue Jackets that showed up after the Olympic break, right? Maybe 5, depending on who you ask. But he was a big part of the playoff push, right? Obviously, it fell short, but Mason Marchment, pretty good player. Is Alex Tuch a better player? I think so. But that also means, obviously, that he's going to command more money, right? And again, we'll talk about contracts in a second here, but Alex Tuch is arguably, I think, the best free agent forward on the market right now. I'm just going to pull up what the UFA targets are, but with Charlie Coyle not available anymore, I really do think that like the free agents are it's a weak class, right? Like we know this, we've done this. In terms of UFAs right now, you've got Alex Tuch, you've got Darren Radish, Ovechkin and Malkin are obviously up there, but they're not going anywhere, right? Anthony Mantha is another guy that I think is going to get a big raise, but you know, there's your top 5, right? Is in terms of free agents overall is Radish, Tuch, Ovechkin, Mantha, and Malkin. Those are your top 5 UFA scorers. John Carlson is in 6th place. With Coyle, who I believe would have been in that mix. I don't remember how many points he had off the top of my head, 60 something, I want to say. 61, I think. With him taken out of that mix, you're looking at this free agent class and you're like, well, who's available that is still pretty young and still, you know, gonna bring value to the team, right? 30, Alex Tuch is 30. He's about at that age where, you know, he wants that long-term UFA contract, I'm sure, you know, and Buffalo is not like the most cap-strapped team I've ever seen, but they are super not like, they're not in a great place. I had the cap situation up in a second. But so they next season have $12 million in cap space to spend. Which you're like, yeah, that's fine. They could definitely fit Alex Tuch in that. But with that, their active roster sits at 21 out of 23, so they really only need to sign a couple of guys. But one of the guys that they need to sign is Zach Benson, who's coming off his entry-level contract. So that's going to be interesting, I think. I also think they're going to want to upgrade on defense. Luke Shen and Logan Stanley are both UFAs that they acquired at the deadline. So they're going to have to figure out a way to bring some of those guys back. Like they're like I said, they're not in like complete salary cap hell, but they are not like the Blue Jackets have money to burn, essentially. Not money to burn, but they can afford to give Tuch a contract that the Buffalo likely can't. So it really depends on a handful of things, right? I think it depends on what happens in Game 6 against Montreal. If they manage to take it to a Game 7 and then win that Game 7, then, does Alex Tuch re-sign with Buffalo? I think really kind of depends on how these playoffs end. I think if they go out fighting, then, it's very much a case of, is this the beginning for the Sabres in terms of their window opening, right? And Buffalo's a weird team. I feel like they're not like super young. They've got good pieces, but a lot of their good pieces are, 26 to 30. Is this their window opening with their first playoff berth in 15 years or whatever it was, 14 years? Or are they going to turn to the young guys, right? You Josh Doan, who's 24, you Zach Benson, 21, like Noah Erstlund is 22, right? Like these, in theory, are the future of your team. You've got Josh Norris signed long term. You've got Tage Thompson locked up long term. Is Tuch still a fit for this team? And I'm not sure about that. So I think he definitely could be available. I just don't know if he fits into what the Blue Jackets are looking at right now. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about his contract, what that's going to look like, all in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here and every possession matters. If you are looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $150 for just getting started. FanDuel's great during the playoffs, right? You can check stats, trends, matchups before making your picks. Everything you need is in the app because I personally get stuck. I've got 14 tabs open trying to figure out who's hot right now, who to put my money on, and FanDuel has all of that in one place, which is great. Whether you're looking at player props or just following your favorite stars, it adds another level of excitement to every game. Super easy app to navigate, and it makes playoff basketball and hockey even more exciting from start to finish. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, $5 is going to get you $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, play your game. I've also got to tell you about 5 Hour Energy. If you've got a sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all of the sugar. And that's why they've got flavor explosions, they've got fruity rainbows, they've got cotton candy, they've got all kinds of fun flavors. They're all great. They all taste like real. They don't have that like awful fake candy taste that you get sometimes with a lot of flavored things. They've got a great caffeine boost. I use them all the time when I'm traveling. They are just little shot guys that live in my bag or in my pocket or wherever. And I will knock one back if I need a little pick-me-up. It's become my go-to when I want something sweet and energizing without going overboard. So bring on the sweetness with cotton candy or Fruity Rainbow 5 Hour Energy Shots, available online now at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Before we get on to the next segment, I want to remind you about the Everydayers Club. Locked On Blue Jackets is available at lockedonbluejackets.supercast.com, and for just $5 a month, you are going to get ad-free episodes of this show. You are going to get a bunch of cool perks as well, like access to our exclusive Discord, access to an exclusive merch store, all of that stuff. So again, go to lockedonbluejackets.supercast.com to find out more, or click the link in the show notes below. Let's talk a little bit more about Alex Tuch and what that contract could look like. Because I still think, and I talked about this a little bit in the first segment, is I think he's looking for the Adrian Kempe contract. I don't know what Adrian Kempe's stats are off the top of my head, so I'm going to pull those up real quick. But Kempe is 29 years old. Like I said, he just signed that $10.6 million contract extension in LA, which is kind of a bummer because he was a guy that I was kind of potentially targeting for the Blue Jackets. But he's consistently been like a 70-ish point guy for the past 4 seasons. 67 points, 75 points, 73 points, 73 points for the LA Kings, back-to-back 35 goal seasons, 40 goal season back in 22-23. So again, I think Kempe is better than Tuch. He's been playing on a better team, which has helped, but I think that's probably the comparable, right? Is Kempe for a winger of that age. Maybe that drops a little bit. Again, I think the rough playoffs that he's having is dropping that target, but like, is Alex Tuch going to ask for like $9 million in free agency? Quite possibly. And that's kind of where I start thinking, that's a lot of money. Again, for a guy who is 30. I've talked kind of at length over the past couple of weeks about how much money the Blue Jackets have locked up in 30-year-olds. They've got $34 million in cap space. They've got their 3 key RFAs to sign in Fantilli Sillinger, and Greaves. That will bring that active roster to 19 out of 23. If we assume that they get all of that done for 20 million, then that gives them 14 million to sign 4 more players. Assuming that there is no trades or anything like that, like, I think I'm still not convinced that Dmitry Voronkov is a Blue Jacket coming into the end of the season, and that'll free up another 4 million for the Blue Jackets to play with. Like, there's gonna be some moves made. I think I just don't know what those moves are yet. But I don't know that I want to drop $9 million on Alex Tuch. I think he would be a good fit. And we'll talk about that in a second here, of like why I think that they should go for him, is because I think he would fit in really well. He's a good goal scorer, but he's pretty kind of balanced, right? Like, he's not pure playmaker, he's not pure goal scorer. And I think that line has a goal scorer in Marchenko. It's got the center in Fantilli, who can, has again shown us that he can put the puck in the net and also pass the puck. I think Tuch adds a little bit of not physicality necessarily, but he's a big dude. He adds a little bit of size. I don't think they need a ton of size on that line. Like, Fantilli's 6'2". Marchenko's not small, right? But it adds again a little bit of veteran stabilization on that line as well. And I think he will be an upgrade on Marchment. As much as I like Marchment, it really depends. And again, it depends on what Marchment is asking for as well, right? I think Marchment is definitely going to be asking for less than Alex Tuch. But if it becomes a case of like saying, we'll do $9 million for Tuch and $6 million for Mason Marchment, is Alex Tuch 50% better than Mason Marchment? Right? Like, that's the thing that I would do. I also, like, obviously term comes into it. Do either of them going hard for that long term? I don't think it'd be 8 years, actually, if it's a UFA signing. I think you can get Marchment for 8 years if you wanted to. I don't think you should. But I think you'd only be able to get Tuch for 7 unless you did a sign and trade before July 1st. But if we look at the Charlie Coyle contract, I think that's probably what Marchment specifically is potentially looking for, is probably that Charlie Coyle contract of 6 years for $6 million. 6 years for $9 million of Alex Tuch feels a little rich for my blood, right? I do think that he will be, again, and we'll talk about this in more detail in a second, is I think he will be more of a difference maker than Marchment, as much as I like Marchment. But I think he will be more expensive. And I think that he doesn't bring as much versatility to that line as Marchment does. Also, as something, well, again, I'm going to talk about Tuch's fit on that line specifically in a second. I'm not going to get too much into Mason Marchment, but that's the comparison, right? Is, do you keep Marchment, or do you try and upgrade him with Alex Tuch for the same age and probably more points and also more money? Marchment has chemistry with these guys. He's been there for, when did he get traded? December, and he spent basically the next 4 months minus the Olympic break on that line. He got moved up and down. Marchment is prone to some creative decisions with the puck. But what I did find interesting in terms of Marchment versus Tuch is I've been using hockeyviz.com to kind of get a snapshot of a player in terms of advanced stats, right? And Tuch is not the biggest advanced stat darling. Let's say he is kind of a net neutral player when he's on the ice. Like, he I think is potentially not being carried necessarily, but I think the fact that he plays with Tage Thompson, I assume plays a ton of his minutes with Rasmus Dahlin as well. There's lots going on there that he, again, according to hockeyviz.com, which is not a be all and end all, is plus, he is minus 1% worse than league average, kind of overall. So not great. HockeyViz has him listed as essentially a pretty good third liner, which I don't know that I completely buy into. I don't know that he is a bona fide elite first-line player. But when you go in and you look at Mason Marchment, who is listed in here as a pretty solid second-line player, and he will cost less, I'm like, do you take the increased offensive impact that Marchment has for his teammates with the kind of the lackadaisical defense? Like, Mason Marchment is not defensively solid. He just is not. But he's very good at creating offense on his own. He creates way more offense than Tuch does, but is not as good defensively. So again, it really comes into. Also of note is that Alex Tuch is pretty good on the power play. Marchment is not great on the power play. So if you think Alex Tuch is going to be a guy that can help you with your power play, then that to me is also potentially very intriguing. I like Marchment. He wasn't great on the power play. He scored a couple of big goals for the Blue Jackets, but he doesn't create a lot on the power play. And yeah, if I flip over just briefly to Tage Thompson, who is a bona fide first-line center, he creates and scores a lot more that I think is what impacts Tuch's overlying numbers, let's call them, versus the underlying stats. So is Alex Tuch as good as his numbers say? Yeah, probably. But I'm not convinced that he is the answer for the Blue Jackets on the top line. And I don't trust that his production will not fall off a cliff. He's kind of been vaguely declining since his age 26 season, which would have been the 22-23 season. That was his best season by far in terms of analytics. And then since then, he's kind of floated around the second line and dropped into a third line role this season. Not in terms of ice time, just in terms of impact on the ice. And again, your opinion may vary. This is just the analytics site that I'm using. But I'm not super convinced. And again, maybe some of this for me anyway is like recency bias, right? Tuch has not had a great second round of the playoffs. And that has really, really hurt Buffalo, right? Like, they've been getting depth scoring, but the fact that you're in this Montreal series, Alex Tuch has 0 points and is I don't buy plus minus, but I believe this says he's a -8 if I'm doing the math right on the fly, and that is not ideal. If he's scoring 0 goals, then he's been on the ice for 8 even strength numbers, which is not 5-on-5, which is slightly different. But let's see if I can find his actual numbers real quick. He's not having a good playoffs, especially like this series against Montreal specifically. He was pretty good against Boston. I would say he was more than pretty good, actually. But I feel like he's been a real feast or famine kind of player this playoffs, right? Great against Boston, not great against Montreal. Which player is he? Is he somewhere in the middle? Pretty likely. But I think my ultimate opinion, and maybe I'll change my opinion on this when I talk about how he fits in the next segment, is that I think he's going to be more expensive. He'll be more effective than Marchment, but also more expensive. And I don't know if the extra cost is worth it, right? So let's try and figure out how he fits into this organization in just a second. First, I'm going to tell you about Rocket Money. If you've ever opened your bank account and thought about where's all your money gone, you're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast, and that's where Rocket Money comes in. They're helping you take control of your finances all in one place. It tracks all your subscriptions in one spot and help cancel the ones that you don't need with just a few taps. Automatically categorizes your spending so you can see where your money is going, and you can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of upcoming bills. Makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clearer picture of your finances from day to day. Rocket Money helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let them help you reach your financial goals faster. Join rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's finish off with, where does Alex Tuch fit into this organization, right? Because the obvious point is that he fits in on that top line with Fantilli and Marchenko. They need a winger there isn't, if Marchment goes, then there is a big hole there. And I talked about how Jason Robertson is obviously is the ideal fit there, but the Blue Jackets are running out of cap space to make big moves like that, especially with this Charlie Coyle extension. Again, Fantilli's going to get an extension. Greaves is going to get an extension. Sillinger, you've got to keep money for Marchenko and Matejchuk 2 years down the line. Like again, they've got plenty of space. I'm not worried about the Blue Jackets, but they will potentially not have plenty of space if they decide to give Alex Tuch $9 million, which I think is probably about what he's going to command. Which your opinion may vary on whether he's like worth that, but that is my guess as of right now, just based on a couple of comparables and what the salary cap is doing right now, and like what other players on the team are worth as well. Not that there's an internal cap, but I wonder how happy the organization will be to pay Alex Tuch much more money than Tage Thompson, who is, the centerpiece of that team right now, and Rasmus Dahlin as well. But Rasmus Dahlin is making $11 million, so that's not really a thing. In a vacuum, I think Alex Tuch fits onto this top line pretty nicely. Like I talked about this in the second segment. I do wonder what that means, again, going forward for, like, what do you do with your second line, right? Like, they went and they acquired Connor Garland for that second line. Is your second line Garland, Monahan, Kent Johnson? Do you put Alex Tuch on that second line and try and find a dance partner for that top line somewhere else, right? Like, do you try Kent Johnson up there? I think some of Kent Johnson's best hockey in not last season, but the season before, when he had almost 25 goals, his best hockey was when he was playing with Adam Fantilli, right? And I think he would, again, complement that line pretty nicely. And then you've got that second line of Tuch, Garland, and Monahan, your veteran line, let's call them. You got your kid line and then your veteran line. I think either of those are options, but I do think that they are actively trying to find a fit on that top line. Not top six. I think they are actively trying to find a top line forward. And I don't, again, in a vacuum, I think Tuch fits there. I'm not super convinced that he's the best fit. I'm also not convinced that Mason Marchment is the best fit either. I think if I had to choose between them, I still think I'd probably go for Marchment, just because I think he's going to command less money. And I don't think the extra money that you'll pay Tuch will be of the correct ratio, right? Like, if you were going to pay Marchment $6 million and Tuch $9 million, then are you expecting a 60-point season from Marchment and then a 90-point season from Tuch? And like those numbers are inflated, but that's the quickest math I could do, right? That's kind of the ratio, right? Is are you going to get $9 million worth of points from Tuch versus are you going to get $6 million worth of points from Marchment? I think you are way more likely to get $6 million worth of points from Marchment. I think the added chemistry that they've already developed is a plus as well. Which is weird. Like at last season, I was looking at Buffalo and like I was like, yeah, Tuch would probably. I feel like Tuch would be a pretty good fit on the Blue Jackets. They need top six wings. They need a guy like him. Again, he's not like super physical, but he will throw the body. He will make a hit. He is a bigger guy, but he's also a skilled guy. And also the Blue Jackets didn't have as much of a problem with veterans locking up a lot of the cap, which is what they've done at the minute. Like, again, a lot of the cap is locked up with veterans. And you have this problem with either Marchment or Tuch, right? Like, that's not a knock against Tuch. I'm not going to say don't sign him because he's 30 years old, right? You're going to have that issue whether you go with Tuch or Marchment, which I think is why I kind of lean on the side of I would probably let Marchment walk and try to upgrade him with a younger player, but I also understand that younger players do not grow on trees, especially in the UFA market. So overall, I think Tuch is a fit on paper, but not a long-term solution. But I don't know if Buffalo re-signs him. I do wonder where he goes. I wonder whether I'm trying to think of teams that have cap space to burn and like potential holes in the lineup. Like, I wonder if Washington is a fit, right? I wonder if Dallas loses Robertson, do they try and replace him for cheaper with Tuch, right? Again, Robertson is probably going to command Rantanen plus money Tuch is not going to command $12 million, right? So that will be an upgrade for them in terms of cap space. They're still struggling with the cap, but a $9 million of Tuch will fit under that cap way easier than $14 million of Jason Robertson, right? There's a lot of moving pieces. And again, if you are a fan of those teams and you come here, those are literally, I just throw those names out off the top of my head, right? I don't actually know if Tuch would be a fit there. I was just thinking, right, who's going to be in the market potentially for a top line winger? And I think that, again, it depends on whether Ovechkin stays in Washington or whether it retires. It depends on what the Dallas does with Jason Robertson. Those were just the two teams off the top of my head. But overall, I think I come down no on Tuch as of right now. Maybe things will change. Maybe he'll accept less money. Maybe he'll figure out how to play in the playoffs against Montreal in tonight's game. I don't know. But my conclusion here, I think, is I'm going to say no to Alex Tuch. Especially not over Marchment. I think I go Marchment over Tuch, but I'm not married to the idea of bringing Mason Marchment back necessarily. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens. There's still time before July 1st happens. Again, Blue Jackets might make a trade. They might extend some contracts. We don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. I'm going to be back on Monday. I'm not sure what that episode is going to be yet. Because I am traveling this weekend, so it might be a pre-recorded draft profile that I did earlier this week with Tony Ferrari. It might be another UFA target. I'm not sure yet. Depends on how much time I have this weekend. But I'll be back on Monday either way with a brand new episode. Thank you for listening to this episode. Making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.